Going live.
Hey y'all, I am James Wright and welcome to the shop. We are going to have a good time tonight because we are going to be hopefully finishing this thing. I said that last week, but we're going to do it this week. So yes, we are making a splined miter joint, and we need to actually put in the spline. Last week we did the miter and clamping it all up, but you can't actually do the spline miter joint until it is all clamped up and secure. So that is what we are going to be working on tonight. Updates. Really isn't too much. We've been at a few things going on in the shop. I've got a couple projects that are coming up. Yeah, the big thing is Sarah's bench is done. So if you haven't seen that, videos are live on both channels.
Has quickly become the chair holder.
Yes, it is a horizontal surface, so it holds things.
So much for being able to do any projects on it.
You can kick it off anytime you want. Ooh, look at that look, folks. That right there is the look of, ooh, yeah, that's the look. Mm-hmm. So, we're going to work on this and take all of the clamps off and get it glued together, or put the spline in and glue the whole thing together. Ooh, why is that sliding? Well, that's because I'm going to clamp down all the way. Let's do this first. There we go. So let's start taking this apart and see what we've got on here. And with most of these, they're not terribly tight on there. They're just kind of holding the thing together. There are a couple of them that had to be kind of twerked into place. Twerked? Twerked into place, I guess.
I don't want to see you twerk.
Oh, yes, you do. They may not, but I know you do. So,
this is what happens when we do everything at a different time.
Yes. Yeah, we would, yeah. So it's not normally going to be at 7, but it is this week because of family matters. Good old show. So we got all that off, and let's see how we've got on this. It is, ooh, don't push buttons. Let's try this. It is actually pretty good, except for the one big gap. Everything else is relatively tight. And this will be our miter joint, our splined miter joint we're working up. So that is going pretty good. So tonight, we're going to do the spline miter joint. We're going to flush up, clean it up, and take a close look at all the joints and how it all came together, and have a bit of fun with that. So for the spline, I'm actually using this piece of 1/4-inch Paduke, and we're going to be putting it in just like that. Nothing major, just a little bit like that. Another common way is actually to put a dowel through, so you can actually just drill a dowel and pound that through. The spline just looks a little bit better because you'll get the spline on both sides. I was hoping to find something a little bit bigger so that it would go a little farther into the joint. I normally like it to go about 2/3 of the way down the joint line, but in this case it'll go about halfway, not quite halfway. But for demonstration's sake, that will be perfectly fine. If I had something a little bigger, I probably would do that. And I was thinking about actually making a spline the right size that I would want, but we got what we got, and we'll work with that.
You got what you got.
So first thing I want to do is put this in to the vise so that it does not move. And I want to put it in such a way that I'm clamping both pieces. And both pieces are not going to move. But I want them to be set up. Why is that twisting out of place? Oh, my clamp is actually twisting it a little bit. So that one's not going to work. There's a bump in my leather. So what it's actually doing is putting those two pieces slightly out of alignment. So that spot is not going to work. So let's actually just do it straight up vertical. And we'll work with it a little bit higher. But then to support this, I'm going to put in a clamp to keep them flush together. And this will keep them from moving. But I'm going to do it on this side because I'm going to be sawing from that side. I don't want it on my side of the board where it can start to cause issues. Oop. Got to make these parallel. Hand screws are a lot of fun, but only if you keep the jaws parallel. So this is all set up. Let me get the camera in here so you guys can actually see this a little better. Would have been smart for me to actually think about setting this up ahead of time. But, oops, well, what questions we got? Or do we have anything yet? Well,
I don't have anything.
we don't have anything yet. I wasn't expecting to. I don't know how much I really like.
Okay, but
this new
today
tripod.
you need to show how your end of your bench is not flush, because that is
Yes.
the most common comment
We've been getting
on my bench build.
a lot of comments about Sarah's bench not having a flush end on it. And there
Y'all
really
are
is no
OCD.
reason to have a flush end on it other than the aesthetic make you happy part of it. There we go. So there is the top of my miter, and we are going to be putting this down into that. So the first thing we need to do is cut the groove that this thing fits down into. So to do that, we need to actually mark out where it's going to go. Now basically we're making a mortise for this. So to do that, I'm going to grab my mortising gauge. And in this case, I would usually choose the chisel that would fit it, but because I'm using this, ooh, had some really good Mexican. Because I am fitting this in there, I want the gap to be this thickness, which in this case is really, really close to my 1/4 inch chisel. So that'll be nice. So what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to put it on here, grab my marking knife, and we are going to lay out the size of this. Now, where I put it in this side to side really doesn't matter that much. I can put it all the way over on one side or all the way over on the other, but somewhere in the middle. For aesthetic purposes, just having it right in the middle looks the best. So I'm going to put a little small nick here, and I'm going to lock it in place, put a knife on the other side, put a nick there, just make sure that's what I want. Yep. And then with those nicks in there, it makes it very easy to set up the gauge on here. I'm going to put it on this side because it's away from the camera. And well, that does happen to be my reference side. That's the side with the tape. So I'll make it a little easier. I'm going to loosen up all of these. I'm going to put the first pin in here. I'm going to slide the second pin over, put it into its mark, so I can lock those into place. Slide the fence over into place, and then hold it all in, tighten this down. And now I know my marks are exactly where they should be. And I can mark down this side. So I'm going to have to take this off in order to get all the way down there. So I can mark this side and this side. Now, for how deep down do we want to go, I can put this on here, and I can put a small mark right there. Just a tiny little mark. And I can grab my unsquare, put that on here, and bring it down until it's at that mark. Put a nick there, put a nick there, and then with those, I found my little square. It was in the sawdust underneath my bench. Put my knife into that nick mark, slide that up against it, and I can make a mark on this face. Do the same thing on this one, upside down and backwards with the other hand. Mark on there, and a mark into that face. That camera angle is not where I want it to be for that. Let's actually move it down just a little bit.
I'm very distracted by Bob Ross while you do that.
Oh,
It's like
is Bob getting into this?
Yes.
Bob getting more FaceTime? So with that on there, I'm going to make sure that these lines, want it to be on the right side of the board. I want to make sure these lines go all the way down to that stop mark. And that's what we're going to be cutting out. So on that line, I'm going to stay inside the line. And I'm going to cut down one side, cut down the other. I'm going to try and stay right on those lines. And then we're going to chisel out in between. So let's put this vise back on here to keep these locked together. In this case, I'm going to grab my tenon saw because I'm going to be cutting with the grain. Even though it's at 45 degrees this way, the grain lines are still running in that direction. I'm going to get this saw backed up a little bit, otherwise we're going to be running into issues. Get this saw backed up, this camera backed up. Oop, focus. And with this, normally I want it to be a little lower in the vise, except for that vise is in the way. but because I wasn't able to get just this point in the vise sticking up, we have to work a little bit higher. So sometimes you can't always work exactly where you want to. And so I'm going to put it right in the saw, right on the line, right there. Now I can't see your side of the line, but I can see my side of the line. So I'm going to go down a little ways, about that far, but then I'm going to start lowering the saw, running down my line. And hopefully, I'm not going too far off on the back, right where I want to be. Good. Do the same thing on the second line. Remember to stay on the correct side of the line. There we go. And now we're going to follow this line all the way down. Now normally I would come around from the other side and do the same thing from this side, but because the camera's over there, I'm going to do this completely without seeing what it is. I'm just going to trust that my hand is straight. Every now and then stop and check it. In this case I need to wiggle it over a little bit. Actually, I need to move that way just a hair. So I'm going to put a little bit of pressure on the plate, just pushing the backside over just a little bit. And you notice I'm not trying to cut it, I'm not trying to correct it all the way down at the bottom. I'm actually going to lift the saw up a little bit and use the side of the teeth to move the line over and correct the problem ahead rather than just down where it is. There, now we're on line. Making sure, a little over the other way. This is one really awkward cut because I'm cutting way up here in my elbow. There, now we're on line. Still a little ways off. So we're going to have to come back in and clean it up with a chisel. At least I'm off in the correct direction rather than bring it in the wrong direction. See if I can fix that just a little bit more before getting down to the stop cut. Stop mark. And I want to make sure I can see my mark. And make sure you chew your tongue. You'll get far better accuracy if you do that. Okay, so I'm at my line there, and I'm at my line there. That's where I want to be. There's one. Now let's do the other one. And if I could see it on my side, it'd be a lot faster. But sometimes I like doing things in weird ways, like doing it with the left hand, or twisting it in one way or another, just to learn a different body mechanic and a different method. Because the more methods I can use, the more methods I have at my disposal for when I can't do it the way I want to do it, when something's in my way, or when I need to shoot that camera angle from the other direction. And one more, almost down to depth. There we go. Depth on both sides. So, now we've cut that down. Now we want to come in and chisel out the waist. But in this case, I want to make this a little bit easier to chisel out. So I'm just going to freehand one cut in between those two cuts and get this a little bit out of focus. Just like that. I love these cuts, but it doesn't matter. There's no line for me to follow. I don't even see the backside. Yeah, see, I'm off center, but it really doesn't matter. This is just going to make it a little easier to chisel. Down to cut here. Right there. That'll just make it easier to remove that waste in between. Any questions?
Let's see. Alex asked a question about wooden clamps. Which one is better, metal rods or wooden thread ones?
It really doesn't matter. They're both equally good. I use mostly metal ones, not because one is better than the other, but because I can actually get a hold of them. They tend to be far more common and a more reasonable price. Because I have a whole bunch of wooden ones as well, and they work just as well. The problem with the wooden ones is they tend to be older, so you often have cracks in them, other things like that that weaken them. And the newer, the metal ones don't tend to be quite as old, and so you tend to get slightly better vices, clamps, but in functionality, they're about the same. So, 1/4-inch chisel and mallet, and we are going to come in and get rid of most of this. Now, I'm not going to be too terribly picky about how this is all coming in, except for I need to actually focus. And I would love to get an arm that I could just bring down and set in place, but unfortunately, I can't. Those are crazy expensive. Maybe I'll make one someday, but that would be a serious project. So, I should be cutting all the way down here is my stop mark. So that'd be down here. But I'm actually going to start up here and get rid of some of the waste. Now, because on this board all the grain is going here, and this board all the grain is going here, at this point I'm actually going to chop in about halfway down the board this way. I'm going to chop in at 90 degrees to this grain. And I'm going to go in a little ways, and then it suddenly stops. I'm going to back up and remove a little bit of the junk, and come in a little farther. Eventually, these pieces will just pop out, because you get to the point where the grain runs out here in the middle, and they split out. I'm going to do it from the other side so you can see it a little bit better. So on this side, I'm going to come in here, chop in, then I'm going to turn it around, get rid of the waste, then chop in again, pull it out, get rid of some more waste, until eventually those pieces pop out. Now, I don't worry about cutting too deep here in the middle, because it doesn't matter if the bottom of this is perfectly flat. I'm going to try and make it somewhat flat, but that does not matter at all. Now that I've gotten rid of most of the waste, I'm going to come in here flat across, and I'm going to eyeball from this mark to this mark. I'm going to stay a little ways away from the line still. I'm going to get rid of most of it. So on this side, you can see I'm going to chisel towards myself. Not the best way to do it, but there's a camera on the other side. Just like that. Now we're going to come down a little closer to the line. Again, just eyeballing it from one side to the other. Most of the way through from that side. You can see I'm only chiseling until I get to the middle here. I'm not going to blow through into the other side, because then I'd be going into the grain, and that doesn't work as well. Almost to the line. And in this case, I'm actually going to go right just a hair away from the line here. There, to the middle. At least it feels like it's in the middle. Yep, in the middle. And then on this side, I'm going to do the same. Right there's the line.
Always a great idea to chisel up towards yourself.
Yeah, yeah. You want to see how ridiculous this is. This is like trying to chisel in such a manner without hitting yourself and without causing other problems. I'm going to come in and remove anything that's loose in here. Now, what I want to do is I want to make sure it's flat from point to point. So I'm going to grab my square, and I'm going to set it in here so that it's touching this side here. And then as I tip it down, I want it to touch the other side at the same moment. And there it is, actually. Now there's a little bit of a bump in the middle. So there's a little bit of a rock from side to side. I got to clean that out. So I'm going to come in with this and just pare out that little bit of a bump right there. Let's give that a try again. There. Now I know my bottom is flat, and so I'm going to put it right into that line and just shear off that last little bit running across there. Do the same thing this way. Chisel towards yourself with more control. Shear off just that last little bit coming across. So just that one shaving right there was all that I needed to come out, except for there's more of it inside. Like that. Let's make sure where we're at. Okay, now we know our depth is down to place. The problem is, I'm pretty sure that groove is a little bit too tight. Actually, it's a hair loose. Oh no, it is loose. Not by much, but it shouldn't slide all the way down in there like that. So apparently my saw was off, or my mark was off. But here, let me see if I can wiggle it so you can see the gap on your side. If I pull it back this way, you can see there's about a, 32nd to a 64th of an inch gap along there. So a couple different options. Number one, when I clamp this, I could squeeze that gap out and it'll get all but what's right down there. Number two, I could go make a new piece of wood to fit down in there. Number three, I could add in shavings. I've made some big shavings to fit down in there. Let me see, do I have something that would fit? Here's a piece of zebra wood. It's about a 16th of an inch thick. I would have to shave that down a bit. Should we do that? What time do we have? 20? Yeah, not quite that much time. The nice thing about this is there's nothing special about that spline. I could grab something else and plane it down until it fits. Oh. See, that's actually really close. Some lace wood. Should we use lace wood? Let's use lace wood. That's actually really tight. I like that. Okay, let's use some lace wood. So it's not Paduke. We're going to do it with lace wood. So
That's why you don't ever throw anything
yeah,
away.
there's always a pile of scraps. Got any questions while I'm fiddly dinking?
Ross Ritchey asked, do the woods typically have treatment with mold/pest resistant chemicals, or are they typically nicer woods that don't need it?
Yeah, none of the woods I work with have any treatment in them at all. That's usually only for treated lumber, the green stuff, or in some places it's purple. And you get that for like decks and things like that at your home center. Most everything else is just raw wood. But yeah, don't work with that. It's not happy stuff. So we've got this piece jammed down in here. I'm going to take this pencil and I'm going to mark out very roughly what I want. And then pull that out. So I've got that mark on there. We can shape that out. And I'm trying to think if there's any other treated lumber for pests, and I can't think of any. Yeah. So,
You misplaced it, Dad.
what's that?
Nothing.
To cut this down, I put it a little lower in my vise. I'm going to grab cross-cut carcass saw. Even though I'm cutting it 45 degrees to the wood, it's easier to cross-cut than it is to rip-cut. At least that's my preference. But it really doesn't matter when it's at 45 degrees. So I'm going to set this on here, and I'm going to cut a little ways away from that line. There's absolutely no reason to be dead on that line. Oop. One off. Right down to there. Why is that so tight? Oh, got some splinters jamming in the back. Do the same thing on this side.
So, what kind of a wood is lace wood?
It is lace wood. That's the type of wood.
I know, but like...
Well, okay, the odd thing is lace wood actually can be... There are types of oak that can be referred to lace wood. There are types of maple that I've heard being called lace wood. Usually it's a wood with a big medullary ray where the rays have gotten fatter. But this is a particular species. Let me see, do they have the... Yeah, this one they're calling a leopard wood. Yeah, leopard wood. They're not giving me the species name though. And that's the interesting thing about wood names, is that wood names are never exact unless you get the scientific name for that particular type of species of a tree. Usually they are descriptive names that describe the type of wood that it is. And so things like lace wood can refer to a bunch of things, though there's at least one species that's known as lace wood, and there'd be one scientific name for it. Of course, there's going to be someone who's getting in there who will correct me and lay the smack down on the scientific term. lots of people know far more about wood than I do. I just like playing with it. So there we go. There's our little triangle that will fit down in there. And it's probably a good 16th, drop it on the floor, probably about a good 16th of an inch bigger than it needs to be. It's always fun to see the reality of what a shop looks like as opposed to what you get to see on YouTube, because you only get to see the moment while I'm sawing. Everything is set up and perfect. When I'm sawing, it's good. But then once I stop and I turn around, I'm switching out tools and everything goes to... That's the way a shop works. So don't ever expect perfection. Why are you rotating? Yeah, that is better. Helps if I turn the right knob to lock it down on. I'm trying this angled tripod to see if I can get a little bit better setup, but so far I'm not liking it quite as much. So now we can put this down in there. That goes in pretty well. Nice tight fit there. Good on the bottom. Good on the bottom. Now we can glue this in. Maybe, if I can get it out.
So,
good fit. Did
say earlier why you would use this particular joint?
This joint is when you want a miter joint. And some miter joints by themselves are weak because you're going end grain to end grain. The glue there is going to do basically nothing. And what this does is it gives you a long grain to long grain that fits in, and that will give you a good glue surface because you'll have the long grain connection on this to the long grain connection on that. And that will provide a good strong surface between the two so that they're not going to want to pull apart. So you still get the aesthetically pleasing miter joint from the front and back, but then you can put the spline in there to actually add rigidity and strength to it. And some people like to see it because it looks, you have this inlay on the outside edge that just looks kind of nice. Now, for time's sake, because I do want to get it done tonight, we are going to be using super glue or 2P tin. This is the gel, and for most applications, structural, this is actually a really, really strong glue. Though so far, the longevity tests I've been doing show that not a great longevity test. But for something like this, there's no structural application to this. I could use any other glue, but because I want to get it done for video's sake, we're going to be using this. I use it for a lot of little fixes and mess ups and other things like that. Oh, my gel.
Not
Out of
to
gel?
your hair.
It's really thick, so I got to get it down to the tip. And now, yeah, I think I'm out of gel. I think it's all. Yep, okay, so we're going to have to downgrade from gel to thick. That's why I have this whole kit of different types. Yep, the thick is good. I can feel that. So, I'll put the thick on here. And I'm going to smear it all the way down this edge. And then all the way down this edge. And this edge. Superglue kind of gets a bad rap, cyanoacrylate. And a lot of people are like, really, really don't like it. It's not the best. It's not the strongest. Well, in initial application, it's actually one of the strongest. But in long-term application, not so much. I'm going to put on a decent smearing on here. Now, when we actually put this into place, I'm going to use some activation, and that is going to make it very, very quickly on the outside, but the inside will take a lot longer to set up. So now let's wiggle this down in. Get the mallet. Get that where I want it to be. Make sure I get it all over my fingers. And then I'm going to quickly grab my activator. I'm going to smear it up. Doesn't take much. Just like that. And now what I've done is activated everything on the outside. Actually, there's a small gap here in the mortise. So if I spray in through there, I'll get some in there. The other side does really nice and tight. And just like that, we're going to let it sit for a moment. And we'll be able to do all of our finished detail on it, which is one of the really fun things about cyanoacrylate. So So I use it for a lot of little oopses and things that I chipped off or broke a piece, or I just got to get it done right now. But for anything structural, not so much. Okay, that's good. So there's our joinery window. Hey, look at that. Now I'm going to clean up this end and make it a little bit more pretty. And this is where this is one of the things that I love about this joint, is how it looks when it's all cleaned up. Actually, I got to clean this off first. Got to trim off this dowel from the what's the word I'm looking for? Oop! Don't push that button. Push this button.
Drawbore?
Drawbore! Ooh, there's a reason I married her. She's good. So let's grab our flush cut. Drop the delicate flush cut on the ground. Cut it off a little suboptimally, not very flush, but that's okay. We have these things called planes, and they clean it up very, very nicely. But first thing I'm going to do is actually come in with a chisel and rotate it around this way. That's the way I want it to go. And make sure the camera can still see it. Right there. And with this, now I can come in and clean it off a little bit more. Except for this, the chisel needs to be sharpened. Didn't think I was using the 3/4. Let me grab my 1/2 inch. Pretty sure my 1/2 inch is good.
Pretty sure?
Pretty sure. Yeah, see, that's better. Maybe not. It's a little better, but not as much. And so now I can use it and reference this side. My fingers are holding it tight. And shear off those fibers. Get it close. Then we can focus on this top area here and get rid of all this. Now I want to be very careful with this, because the grain on the spline is going this way, and the grain on here is going this way. So if I plane this way, I'm going against the grain on the spline. So I need to make sure I'm always going from the tip down. Just going to plane it down to smooth. A little more here. There we go. Do the same thing on this side. There we go. I'm just getting things roughly to smooth, because in a minute I'm going to come in with a smoothing plane and really do it up nice like. Let's see what else needs to come on. Now that we've got this one, we can take all of these stickers off. Yay, sticker offing. What questions do we have? Sorry, I've been missing those.
So, you know, Alex had asked the question about the wooden clamps earlier, and then he said, what about dado stacking handsaws? Dado stacking handsaws?
Dado stacking handsaws. I have never tried that. So dado stacking is, it's actually like circular saws all stacked together, so you get a fatter saw. But to do it with handsaws, I would say just get a fatter handsaw. But I don't know how you would want to do that. let me know why you're thinking about doing that, because that would be interesting, but it sounds like a lot of work. Because usually the fatter the handsaw, the more work it's going to require. The harder it's going to be to push. The more energy it's going to require to do the same work. So most of the time, you don't like fat saws. What?
Evan Van Dyke said, would planing that smooth be a great job for a #1? Oh, Alex says it was a joke. Alex, you gotta put a little...
Oh, you got me on that one. I get all sorts of really weird questions here from time to time. And I spend a couple hours a day answering questions on emails and such. And I get some really fun ones that
But now
make me
James
wonder.
is going to play with this idea, and don't be surprised if it comes out in the
Yeah,
video.
you know, I have done the jet-powered hand plane, so, you know, dado stacked handsaw, there's an idea there. We'll have to roll this around in the brain for a little while and see what comes out. Okay, so we're going to plane this thing smooth and then take a really close look at all of the mistakes and problems along the way. So, what I've got on here is I've got the back face, which happens to have that one big gap, and I've got my front face. So I'm going to smooth the outside edge all the way around, and I'm going to smooth the front face, and I'm going to leave the back face unfinished. That way I get an idea, because one of the issues I want to be able to have all of these boards should be perfectly smooth and flush on the outside. So I can fix that by planing one side really nice. But if I plane both sides really nice, I'll never get to know how far out was I really. So I leave the back side rough so I know how far out of plane I am, but I can smooth up the front side to get a better look at how it all goes together. So let's grab some dogs. Any other questions?
Aaron asked, what do you think about finding a way to mill local woods? In lieu of a pit crew, how do you feel about milling free local logs in general, and chainsaw versus bandsaw in specific? Like, is it worth it? Is it fun, etc.?
Is it worth it? That depends on you and what you want to put into it. Yes, it is a great way to do it. I have several local sawyers that I go to. I don't here because I don't have a great place to do it. My neighbors would be really annoyed. I'm in a small suburb property, and so they get annoyed by what I do already. So I don't want to push it. But yeah, is it worth it? I've looked at doing it several times. I was actually talking with Sarah's grandparents because they own a farm not too far from here about possibly doing that. But there's a good reason why Matt Cremona went out and bought a much larger piece of property out in the sticks. Well, not really out in the sticks. He's not too far out of town. Ah, here we go. Get that dowel down to flush. Getting rid of marks. And you'll hear I'm planing here, it skips there, planing here. So that means the board has a little bit of an undulation because I'm only taking off about a thousandth
Just
of
so
an
you
inch or
know, we
less.
can only see like half the window.
Oh my, sorry.
There you go. That's much better.
Let me bounce this camera over that way a little more. So I'm just going to take this down to flush. Take this one down. I'm trying not to plane cross grain, but there's a few places where you gotta. And the other thing is if I want to stop short, I always want to make sure that I lift. So if I'm planing across here and I want to stop before going out there, I just lift it a little bit early so that there isn't a dead stop. It's more of a transition from one to the other. So I'm just feeling for any of these surfaces that aren't quite flat. There we go. This one needs a little more. And I'm dealing with such small amounts that it's really only the feeling difference. It's a little bit of a height difference here.
So while you're doing that,
Right
Aaron
there.
Fenn wants to know, how wide is that Veritas Custom?
This is the Veritas Custom 4, so the iron is, 2 inches wide? So it's the exact same as a Stanley 4. Same footprint as a Stanley 4. This is my go-to all-time favorite plane anywhere, so it's a good one. There is the main face, and that is actually really happy. I like that one. Okay, now let's do the outside faces. And on these, all of these ends should be pretty close, and most of them are relatively close. But I want to make sure that I'm always planing into the middle. And the reason for that is most all of them have end grain at one point or another that are sticking out. And so if I plane out of a board, I'm going to end up busting up those fibers. So here, I don't want to plane out this way because this tenon is sticking up through. And if I plane out this way, I'm going to bust off those fibers. So I always want to plane into the board. Here in the middle, this tenon is okay because it's captured on all sides, so I'm never going to bust those fibers out. And here, I just need to, there we go. Now I'm flush there. Same thing on this side. That's pretty. Rotate it to the next side. And same thing on this one. Because I have the end grain sticking up here, I want to make sure that I'm planing into the board, not out of it. This one isn't quite flush. I got to spend a little more time bringing down the middle. Close to it there. Turn around, come from the other side. There we go. That's flush across there. Let's do this side. This one is nice. This one has that mitered end over here. So now I can plane off this end because there's no fibers sticking up. So I can just start on this side and take one, pass all the way off. Here we go. Nice and smooth. One last side. And this one again has fibers on both sides. So I've got a plane into the middle. Any questions? Will I finish this? What?
I said,
She's thinking this is scary. She's looking at me that way.
uncharted territory for you.
I prefer to leave that up to you. You're good at it. Any questions?
No, you just asked that 3 times now.
Oh, I was waiting for an answer. Sorry.
It was
Oh, I heard like you were thinking about something. Okay, so let's actually take a close look at this and see all of the defects and problems in close proximity.
Put BLO on it?
What's that?
Are you going to put BLO on it?
I could. Let's look at the problems before I do that because the
I was
BLO
just thinking
hides some
with
things.
that miter spline.
So here we go. This is out of the wrong camera. This is the mitered tenon, and that is very, very pleasing. This is the front face. Come around to this side, really nice and tight. I like that. The back side, it's actually really nice and tight. This face is above this face by about 2/200ths of an inch or so. So a 50th of an inch, I guess, would be what it is. So that's a little out of alignment because in putting, I don't know, that would have been, because this was probably just squeezed down during the clamping. So that's a little high there. Let's see, on this one, this is the pocket hole, nothing much there. Still really nice tight joint, I like that. Here is the half lap, the back of it. Very tight here. Good there, good there. Really nice and tight, I like that one. Here is the half lap dovetail. This one I'm very happy with. Good shoulders on there. Small chip out on the corner, but oh well. Other than that, here's the back, really nice and tight. Let's see, here is the splined miter. Have a little bit of a gap here on the back. Not much, but it's good and tight from here. On this side, it's really nice. Out of alignment though, this piece is tipped in a little bit, or this piece is tipped out. And so the corner doesn't match exactly there or here. So it's not perfect. But you can always fix that by just taking a few shavings off of this side and a few shavings off of this side and make it match up, as long as this doesn't have to be perfectly square. But yeah. Drawboard tenon, really like that. Good and tight fit on that side. Good and tight fit on the back. The tenon was a little bit more loose. There's a bit of a gap over here you can see, but not too bad. Let's see, what's the next one? Oh yeah, here's the non-through tenon. So it doesn't go. It only goes about halfway in, and you really can't see the shoulders on that one, on any side of it. I like that one. That's a really nice tight joint all the way around. Let's see, what else do we have? That one, that one, that one. Yeah, so the last one is the full half lap. And here on the front side, looks fantastic. That's really nice. Very, very tight, very, very tight. Then we flip it over and it's like, oh, well, what happened there? A little bit of a gap on this side too. Not great, but not bad. Trying to see if there's any other defects. Oh yeah, here's the mitered tenon. There's a little bit of a gap there on the mitered side, where the miter came back just a little bit too far, but not too far off. So this is a lot better than my last one, with the exception of that one. Here, let me show you some of the comparisons so you can see some of the differences. So let's start with the splined miter. And this one is the last joint, so it is the most obvious of them. Ooh, it's Camalusa. Let's tighten that back down. There we go. So here, you can see I had a really big gap on that one. And on this one, almost not at all. There's still a little bit on the back side, but on the front side, nice and tight. The dovetail was pretty similar on these. This one had a little bit more of a gapping issue, but not by much. The half lap had a bit of a gap on this side, didn't on the first one. And even the full half lap, the mid lap, had a bit of a gap here and a bit of gap here. This one was the bridle joint, had a bit of a gap here. And this one is the mitered tenon. Still has a bit of a gap on that side. Pretty good and tight on this side. So all told, my skills have improved, with the exception of stupido. I am very, very happy with it. And so this is one of the things I want to do every 2 years or so, and do a couple windows and see how do they come, how do things change, have I done anything different. And so this is a lot of fun. I kind of like this. I'm a little bit of fear and intrepidation showing off any issues, but this one came out pretty decently. There's always room for improvement. There is no such thing as perfection. You could spend your whole life working on this and always find little problems. Perfection is a direction you head in, not a location. So don't expect perfection, but do expect functionality. That is something that all beginners can get. So have fun with it. So we got, what, 12 minutes left to answer any questions anyone's got?
I have 2 for sure.
Okay. And as a note, next week we are doing an interview with Rob Cosman. So this should be kind of fun. I'm hoping to do an interview live once a month-ish. We'll see how that goes. I was talking with Rex about possibly coming on in August, but we'll see how that pans out. But next week we are having Rob Cosman, so got to figure out the technology to make that work.
I was like, how are we going to make that look?
So hopefully it'll be side by side, my face and Rob's face, and then Sarah's face, and we'll be talking about his projects he's got going, as well as the Purple Heart project, and we might have a few fun things coming out of that one, so stay tuned. What questions we got?
Let's see. Logan Logging On asked, what's a good way to get good at cutting straight lines?
Practice, practice, and more practice. It's one of those things that I can explain it up one side and down the other. I can be there in person and correct your body mechanics and things like that. But until you have done it over and over and over again, you're not going to get amazing results. Now, you can get better results with better body mechanics. And usually the top tips I can give you is, number one, video yourself. Put a camera behind your elbow in line with the saw, and you will see if your elbow is going in and out of placement as you're rocking and forth. You'll see your hand coming over this way, or you'll see your elbow going back and forth, because you want your elbow and your forearm to be perfectly in line with the saw through the whole stroke. that's probably one of the easiest ways is show your elbow and then show it from the side, and you'll be able to see if your body is going all over the place. Because some of the problems is, number one, someone's going to have their body out of the way, so they're sawing like this and their elbow's coming in. Or number two, their body's getting in the way and the saw is actually in front of them and they're sawing like this. And that's causing all sorts of issues. Those are the biggest body mechanic issues. There's a whole bunch of other little ones. The best course of advice I can get is, if it's going off the line, don't try and steer it back onto the line, because then you're just going to get this S that's going all over the place and it's just going to exaggerate more and more every time. The best thing you can do is back up and correct the cut. So if you're off the line down here, back up and fix it where it started to go off the line. Twist the saw in the cut and use the teeth to scratch it back into place until you establish a new cut line, and then continue on from there. So don't try and fix the line. Go back and repair it where it started to have the problem, not where you're down here off the line already. So that's the best piece of advice I can give, but I do have several other videos on how to cut straight if you want to see those. One of those things that once it clicks, it's a game changer. But until you get there, it's always a struggle. What's next?
Let's see. Aaron Fenn asked, as I understand it, perfection has never been on the top of your list on your projects, but has there ever been a project that perfection has been number one?
Yes and no. Perfection is never my goal. Reaching the best of my possible ability at my current skill, I've done that a few times, and that is good. I don't like doing that because that is the natural bent that everyone wants to chase. And I try not to go down the same road that everyone else goes down. I've got to be different. And there are a few projects. My wife's wedding band, I worked on that for a couple of years, and I made several prototypes. One of them I ended up selling the prototype I made to a ring maker, and he ended up actually using it as the cast and making others that are now. And so I've met a couple people who've actually used the ring that I made, or the cast of the ring that I made.
Like your sister-in-law.
Yeah, my brother went out and bought one of them. It was kind of like, oh.
We have the same ring, just different diamonds.
But yeah, I finally got the exact form I wanted on hers, and I spent a lot of time working on that. Yes, I've done goldsmithing. Wood-wise, I generally try not to. I'll often even take projects where I try to mess up. I try to do things as much fun as I can and just whip at it and go to town. I find that I learn more doing that way than I do from trying to chase perfection. Because I learn about techniques, I learn about how I'm doing something, because I'm not worried about making it perfect. I'm worried about having fun with it and feeling what feels good to me. And I find that to be far more instructive and helpful along the way. So, no, I don't chase perfection. Let me actually back up onto this, because this is a question that came up recently about the aesthetics versus functionality. I try not to play one side or the other. They're two sides of the same coin. You can do both at the same time. And most of the time you end up focusing one towards the other. Like with Sarah's bench, we didn't trim off the end of the bench. And that really freaked out a lot of people. And the reason being is there's absolutely no functional reason to trim off the end of the bench. If Sarah wants to come back in and make that cut, go for it. I never trimmed off the end of my bench. It is an absolute mess. Maybe I'll bring the camera over and show you. It is just, yeah, it's a mess. Does it matter? No. But there are people, if you are worried about aesthetics, then it would matter. And so it kind of just comes down to what you're on. Now, I do a lot of aesthetics things. I do a lot of carving in the tools I make, and I like to add extra things to add some feel to it. But I do those if they make me happy. I don't do them because I want it to be perfect. So that's kind of the philosophy that I work with.
I would just add into that, because you've made a lot of furniture for our house. And I'm sure there's several things James would find that are not perfect imperfections in what he's made, but to most people, I'd never know.
That's the thing with making things, is you're always going to be seeing your problems.
I don't know that you really, whenever you make anything, if you're ever truly 100% happy, no matter what you're making.
Yeah, I think that is actually the harder skill to get. The being okay with what you have built is harder to get to a point of doing that than it is trying to chase quality. Everyone out there, everyone is chasing quality. It's your natural desire. Everyone wants to do things better. That is just the way we do things. That's who everyone is. That's being human. Everyone wants to be better. But coming to terms with where you are, coming to terms with being accepted, what am I looking for? Accepting where you are, who you are, what you've done is very hard. And I find that to be the skill that I try to work on, of being okay with what I've created with my current skill, even though I didn't put every ounce of everything I had in to make it perfect. It's okay. It's functional. It's useful, and it pleases me, and therefore I'm happy. That's the skill I try and work at. So. Remember,
the Wright brothers made the worst plane in history.
Yeah.
Everything else was going up. No pun intended.
Yeah, I'm going to show the end of this. What other questions we have while I set this?
Let's see. Sarah, what was that talk called? I would have to look it up, Aaron.
Let's see if I can get the camera.
So Flyfishinchief had asked, plane nearly an 1/8-inch taper on one of my Roubo legs. What would be the best approach to correct it? I was thinking of marking a line and using my scrub plane to get close and a smoother to finish.
An 8-inch taper. Can you read that one more time?
Plane nearly an 1/8-inch taper.
Oh.
On one of my, is it Roubo legs. What would be the best approach to correct it? I was thinking of marking a line and using my scrub plane to get close and a smoother, I'm assuming a smoothing plane to finish.
You would thickness it just like you would what's the word I'm looking for? You would thickness it just like you would a slab of wood. Choose which side of the leg you want to be your reference side. Use a marking gauge to mark off what you want it to be. Make that mark all the way around the board, and then plane it down to that line on the leg. Yeah. So 1/8 inch isn't that much on a big beefy leg, so don't worry too much. The leg only needs to be parallel and exact where it goes into the bench. Everything else is kind of pointless, unless your stretchers have to be matching something exactly. But yeah, just thickness it like you would a normal board, just a really big board. So here, let me show you the end of my bench. I did cut it, but that was because I had several boards sticking off like 6 inches longer. But you can see here, pull these out, my saw cut, I never even came back through and planed it because this cut came out here and this cut came out there. I was just really quickly took a big beefy saw and cut that off because I had planks that were sticking out 6 inches or more. And then I roughly drilled in holes here for all of my dogs to then fit in. And usually I try and get them all in here. But sometimes they tend to wander away. Come on, stay dog, stay. There, I got my dogs in there now. She didn't see it.
No, what did you just get away? Tell me in the chat. I was trying to find
Here,
this.
look at the screen.
Look at this.
I put my dogs in the hole.
I'm going to steal bench dog for my bench, just so you know. Her poor daughter. She's never getting that dog back. No, they were saying that you did a video about kind of what we talked about with being okay with imperfections and whatever. But do you remember what it was called?
I don't know. I've done quite a few philosophy videos.
I didn't know if it was
over
the
years.
lessons learned from the Impossible Table one, or if it was a specific.
No, I've done quite a few videos on that. Like I did the lessons learned on the bench. and I went into philosophy on that. Actually, the one that's coming out this Thursday, I shot most of that today. I had that crack that opened up in my bench, and so I was gluing that back up and used that as a chance to use a bit of that. Being okay with, yeah, things break. Okay, well, fix it, move on. Life is good. Yeah, I've done a few philosophical videos in the past, but I don't know. I'm trying to remember if I don't think I've done one specific that's just that. Maybe. I should do that sometime. Just do woodworking philosophy.
Well, they were saying something. Was it one of your lives that you did?
Maybe. I've hit it in many different videos.
Was to a local guild, Aaron's saying.
Oh, okay, yeah. No, that's actually a talk that I do if I go to woodworking guilds or things like that, and it's how to mess up or how to create bad dovetails. I just like the title, and it is what I do is
clickbait.
Yeah. Well, actually, it's like anti-clickbait because no one wants to do that, and everyone like, I don't know how. I know how to mess up. I want to know how to do things better. The title actually doesn't work very well, but I like it. It makes me happy, so I do it. It was, I think it was how to mess up, but the one I recorded was a woodworking guild in Virginia. But basically, what I did is I spent the hour making one set of dovetails and doing them with basically just a chisel, a saw, and I think I used a square and a marking knife. No layout on it at all, just really, really rough and tumble and quick and easy. And all I'm doing is doing something for the fun of it, to do it quickly, not worrying about quality, just learning to enjoy the process. And that's always a fun talk to give, because one of the big goals of this channel is I want to take people off of completing the project, because everyone wants to have those final Instagram pictures and show off the final project and how it all came together, and that's so cool. I want to move away from that and have fun with this joint, have fun with this particular step of the process. And when you can have fun with every step of the process, even if you're doing it in a weird way and you're doing this joint in a funky manner that is wild and no one ever thinks about, if you're having fun with it, that's the whole point of the shop. And I think a lot of people have lost sight of having fun with this particular step, and all they're trying to have fun in is the end project, and everything else is just work to get to that end project. And I would like to actually move away from that a bit and focus on the fun that you can have right now with every step. So yeah, philosophy. It's a lot of fun. So next week we are going to be doing the interview with Rob Cosman. So come along. That'll be at 8 p.m. Central Time next Tuesday.
So are you going to be talking about a particular subject, or is it going to be a broad range of topics? I'm going to be talking about, first off, who he is, what he does. We're going to be talking about projects that he's working on. We're going to be talking about the Purple Heart Project. And then we are going to be touching on a little philosophy, because that's one of the things that a lot of, particularly on YouTube, is like, ooh, I follow Paul Sellers, ooh, I follow Rob Cosman, I follow James Wright. It's no. There are 100 different ways to do it, and there are 1,000 different people, and everyone's going to have their own way. And being able to learn from different people and why they do it the way they do it is phenomenal. And so that's one of the things we want to talk about is, yeah, he does things his way and I do things my way, and they're wildly different. That doesn't make one of them right and one of them wrong. That just is a different way to do it. And so have fun, experiment, try new things. He has a different focus than I do, and that's a great thing. It gives you a different perspective on the same topic. And so that's one of the things we want to kind of hit and look at. What things do we do differently? What things do we do the same? And why do we do them? So it should be a lot of fun. Anything else? Cool. Well, then I'll wrap it up, and we'll be here next week. So until then, have a wonderful day. Bye. I'm so sad about now.